In 1993, Lorena Bobbitt made international headlines when she took a knife and removed a delicate part of her husband's anatomy. After brutally maiming the sleeping John Wayne Bobbitt, Lorena fled the scene, eventually tossing the severed organ from her car window as she drove away. John Bobbitt's missing appendage was quickly recovered from a field across from a 7-Eleven convenience store and reunited with its owner in a 9.5-hour operation. The shocking case made Lorena Bobbitt a household name, a national punchline, and a poster child of the angry woman narrative. But few people know that nearly 90 years before Lorena Bobbitt wielded a Ginsu carving knife, another woman had committed the same crime, never once expressing regret for her actions. Just after midnight on May 30th, 1907, firefighters at a San Jose fire station heard screams coming from the home of Fire Captain Frank Boronda. Boronda, who lived in the house adjacent to the San Pedro Street station, staggered into the fire station covered in blood and howling in pain. The firefighters had plenty of experience dealing with injuries, but had never seen anything like this before. Frank was rushed to a nearby Red Cross hospital where doctors fought to stop the bleeding as Boronda relayed an unbelievable tale. His wife, Bertha, had sliced off his manhood with a straight razor as he slept. Within hours, Bertha was discovered near the Broad Gauge Depot as she mounted a bicycle disguised in a man's suit. She was taken to the San Jose City Jail, where, upon waking the next morning, she claimed to remember nothing of the incident. On June 1st, while sitting propped up on a cot in his hospital room, Frank swore a complaint to Justice Brown charging Bertha with the crime of mayhem, a felony defined as any person who unlawfully and maliciously deprives a human being, a member of his body, or renders it useless, or cuts or disables the tongue, or puts out an eye or slits the tongue, nose, ear, or lip. When Bertha was questioned by police, she said she was not sorry and did not regret maiming her husband. So who were the Borondas, and what drove Bertha to take such drastic actions? Bertha Zettel, born to German immigrants in Minnesota in 1877, was Frank's second wife. According to the 1900 census, she lived in a boarding house in Snohomish, Washington, and worked at a laundry. A year later, she and Boronda were married. Frank, whose given name was Mario Narciso Boronda, was the great-great-grandson of one of the first teachers in San Francisco who helped build the Presidio in the late 1700s. He'd wed his first wife, Serena, in 1890. 3 years later, Serena had tried to take her own life by drinking chloroform after claiming Frank was physically abusive and had abandoned her and his stepdaughter. In February 1907, he and another fire captain were arrested on suspicion of committing election fraud. They were questioned and released, but the investigation was still unfolding at the time of Bertha's crime. According to Police Chief T.W. Carroll, Bertha Boronda had confessed that she had inflicted the terrible wound on her husband in the dark. As an excuse, she stated that she had become enraged at him and had quarreled with him over the reports that he intended to desert her and go to Mexico, and so seeking revenge, she lost her senses for a time and committed this terrible deed. Bertha was held in jail in lieu of a $5,000 bail until her trial for mayhem began in January 1908. Bertha did not deny maiming her husband, but claimed she'd done so after blacking out in rage. According to her testimony, Frank had taken Bertha to the theatre on May the 29th after the couple had not spoken in 2 weeks. Their marriage had been happy for only a year when she began to suspect that her husband was seeing other women. The pair had separated for 6 months, with Bertha living alone in San Francisco and working as a saleswoman at the Emporium. Frank had written her multiple letters begging to reconcile, and Bertha finally relented, but their relationship did not improve. He would disappear for weeks at a time, and Bertha was forced to corner him in the firehouse on his shifts, begging him to talk. In the weeks before her crime, she had taken to dressing in a suit borrowed from her brother to spy on her husband in an effort to determine where he spent his time after work. She was hardly sleeping, sometimes managing an hour or two each night. She testified that she'd found letters from multiple women in Frank's possession, including one from Lillian Doan, the stepdaughter he'd abandoned. Bertha's testimony implied that the two were now engaged in a romantic relationship. According to Bertha, Frank had taken her to the theatre that night to tell her he believed he would soon be rearrested for vote buying. After their night out, they had a tearful heart-to-heart, and he swore to her that he still loved her. He then asked her to have sex with him, and sometime after they were finished, Bertha blacked out, retrieved Frank's straight razor, and sliced off the appendage while he slept. She then put on her brother's suit and slipped out into the night just as Frank was stumbling next door to the fire station for help. He stated the attack had been entirely unprovoked. In his version of events, they'd enjoyed a nice night at the theatre, and then Bertha had lured him to bed, where she was waiting to attack. Several witnesses testified that Bertha made repeated threats of violence against Frank if she caught him cheating again, including one account of her promising to blow his head off. After closing remarks, the judge gave his instructions to the jury, saying, "Jealousy of wife is no excuse for the commission of the crime of mayhem. The law knows no sex in crime. A woman is as amenable to the law as a man." After 2 hours of deliberation, the jury delivered its verdict. Bertha Boronda was found guilty and sentenced to 5 years in San Quentin prison. In the mugshots taken on the day she was booked into San Quentin, Bertha is smirking, appearing more triumphant than regretful. She was paroled on good behavior in 1909 after just 2.5 years of her sentence. Frank Boronda was demoted and ultimately resigned from the fire department. Perhaps surprisingly, he didn't file for divorce until 1923, citing that his wife had slashed him with a razor and deserted him. By then, Bertha had already remarried, potentially committing bigamy in the process. Frank married for a third time, this one lasting until his death in Monterey in 1940. Bertha worked as a chambermaid and laundress and eventually separated from her new husband. She died in San Francisco in 1950 at the age of 72. Bertha Boronda and Lorena Bobbitt were two very different women who occupied different times in history, but their stories are eerily similar. Both women claimed deep suffering in their marriage, reacting violently after long build-ups of pain, humiliation, and fear. Whether you feel these claims justify the actions taken is up for debate, though we're pretty certain Bertha still wouldn't care. Thank you for watching, and thank you to viewer Leah Fox, who suggested we cover this story. If you have a case or subject from history you'd like us to explore on the show, let us know in the comments below. Right then, take care, and I'll see you next time with another story to make you say, "Well, I never."